Tauverald, Book 1, The Death Tathroenn. Narration performed by Edward James Gray. Additional voices performed by Edward James Gray, Shay and Hannah Neuschwander, and Olivia Brent. Original music composed by Dylan Neuschwander. Chapter 1, Death of the Innocent.
A distant cry of shock, followed by a suppressed grunt, reverberated through the empty stone hallways, then fell to silence. Varun halted for a moment, his heart pounding from the sudden shift in the atmosphere. He drew his dagger and dashed up the stairs toward the sound. Only a few minutes earlier, he had assumed it was unlikely that a man as old as Gamel would have climbed this many stairs, but he had kept his ears open as he searched. Almost all the upper halls were silent during a feast like tonight's. The New Year celebrations regularly drew as many people as the Great Hall could hold. As Varun searched, he had grumbled about Gamel's recent troublemaking.
Instead of sipping merry mead, surrounded by tales and songs, we're traipsing around the castle searching for Gamel.
It was a commonplace task. Gamel was, what Varun liked to call, a little crazy. The aged fellow had been a captain in the Viridus army in his younger years, but now that his body and mind had retired, he could often be found wandering around the empty areas of the vast castle, mumbling challenges to unseen foes or singing odd songs about old legends. It seemed to Varun that the aged fellow was perhaps reliving some grand adventures as he roamed about. On most occasions he was harmless, but required some supervision for his own safety. Varun would have waited for someone else to go find Gamel tonight because of the feast, but a few minutes earlier, the old man had come up behind Varn's friend Nathadar and had taken Nathadar's dagger from its sheath.
Hey now.
Nathadar had protested good-naturedly.
I might need that to defend myself from a Credor imp.
Gamel made urgent mumbling about his need for the weapon while waving his hands around.
There are enough sweets and pastries tonight to summon an entire army of Credor imps,
said Varun.
You'd better get your knife back.
Nathadar chuckled and turned to the table's laughter and conversation for a moment. When he stood up to retrieve his weapon from the old fellow, he stared across the hall with a surprised expression. Gamel had disappeared among the many people at the celebration.
Spry old fellow, isn't he?
Said Nathadar's ruler, Richevet, as they rose and prepared to go after the old man. They asked Varun and Richevet's older sister Illyria to help in their search. Nathadar and Richevet had left to search the lower levels of the keep, while Varun and Illyria headed toward the upper levels. Varun had proposed with a casual air that he and Illyria should work together, like Nathadar and Richevet were. He had trouble expressing a reason for this, though, so Illyria had proceeded with her notion of separating to cover more distance. Varun sighed to himself as he set off alone toward the upper levels. For several minutes he had jogged through the many silent upper galleries and halls. Under ordinary circumstances, he enjoyed viewing the ornate carvings and intricate tapestries that lined the walls of the keep. But tonight was not the night he would have chosen to wander the halls. When he reached the spacious passage leading toward the upper sleeping chambers, he had detected the distant reverberation of Gamel's voice.
Found you,
he said to himself. Varun quickened his pace, keen to return to the feast. It had been a good day since the master of construction had been ill, therefore giving the afternoon off to Varun and everyone else who worked on the wall during their second shift. But Varun's good mood was evaporating as he ran through the halls. He could now hear the old man yelling challenges and objections, but couldn't understand what the man said. He imagined how difficult it would be to persuade Gamel to return to the company of others who could help look after him. Without warning, Gamel's shouts transformed into the blood-chilling echoes of fear and desperation. Wishing he hadn't left his sword in his sleeping chamber, Varun drew the ornate golden-hilted dagger his father had given him for his 14th birthday. He burst into a sprint toward the area the wail came from. The halls were dim since only the pilot lights burned in the lamp sconces. His heart thumped nearly as fast as his pounding feet. Varun was 6 feet tall with a slender frame, but his sprinting footsteps reverberated off the stone walls as if he were a giant. His mind raced around all the possible explanations for the wail.
Viridus is one of the most secure castle cities in Ludenthra,
he thought as he dashed through the hall.
What possibly could have terrified the old man so much?
Varan hoped Gamel had simply tripped or something, but notions of robbers and monsters raced through his mind as he sprinted toward the source of the sound. Varan had only lived in Biridus for 5 years, but he'd never heard of a violent crime or seen an assault successfully breach the castle's walls. His fingers tightened around the hilt of his dagger as he launched himself up a broad flight of stairs and rounded the last corner toward the upper sleeping chambers. His shoes skidded on the smooth stone, then came to a stop. He hesitated for a moment, searching the grand straight hall. The air in the hall was cool, but Varan felt his tunic was now wet with sweat. The hall had a lofty ceiling with stone columns spaced between the wooden doors which lined the hall on either side. Set in the wall at the end of the hall was a floor-to-ceiling stained glass window. The stained glass depicted 2 leafy trees in an exquisite garden. Varan knew that the doors which lined the hall every 30 feet led to large, magnificent bedchambers. Or at least he had been told they were magnificent. He was simply a 20-year-old foot soldier and had never seen inside one. This hall was dim, like the others he had passed through in his search for Gamel. He squinted toward the right wall of the entrance, locating then raising a weighted broad lever which protruded from the wall. Lamps with subtle pilot lights burst into flames as the lever released the steady flow of oil into the slim pipes that traveled along the wall, feeding the lamps. Varan's heart skipped a beat as the hall burst into light. The last door on the left was open. He darted down the hall toward it. The 2 guards who routinely patrolled the upper halls were nowhere to be seen. He glanced at the other doors as he raced past. They were all locked since the occupants of the chambers were at the New Year's feast. He halted as he neared the open door, then proceeded with caution. Sweat from his palms loosened his tense grasp on the dagger. A chill rushed down Varan's spine as the sight of the old man dead on the floor met his eyes. Gamel lay on his back, motionless. His head was twisted sideways at an angle which intact neck bones would never have allowed. Varan paused, wondering if there were windows in the sleeping chamber that would allow the murderer to escape. He presumed there was no other way out than the way he had entered. With shaking hands, he stepped through the broken door. The complex engravings and the heavy wood were undamaged, but the wood all around the hinges was soft and rotten. A powerful shelf had ripped the door off its hinges. It stood at a lean, held only by the bed latch.